Hello, and welcome to Recipes with Ben. And today I'm going to show you how to make homemade pumpkin spice cinnamon rolls from scratch, and then we'll see how they compare to store-bought. So stick around to the end to see how they turn out. There are several elements that need to be made for this recipe that include a pumpkin spice syrup, the dough, and a cream cheese frosting. So let's begin with the pumpkin spice syrup. To start, this recipe calls for water and sugar to make a simple syrup, and followed by pumpkin puree, then sweetened condensed milk, and finally, for the seasoning, pumpkin pie spice. So in a non-stick pot, I heated a quarter cup of water to just near a boil, then slowly added an equal portion of sugar, and using a rubber spatula and stirring it constantly so it wouldn't burn to the bottom of the pot. I then turned the heat to low and added in 7 ounces of sweetened condensed milk, half a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, followed by 1/3 cup of pumpkin puree. I continued to stir the syrup until it became uniform in consistency, and I poured that into a jar and allowed it to cool and set it aside until time to make the frosting. Now for the dough. On a stand mixer equipped with a paddle attachment, I added in 42 grams of butter and 42 grams of sugar, and followed by a pinch of salt. Using the paddle attachment and increasing the speed from medium then to high, I allowed the sugar and butter to beat and cream together until it became light and fluffy. With this small amount inside the bowl, I needed to scrape down it a couple times with my spatula so that it would all stick at the bottom so it could mix together. Then after it was whisked up, I added 1 egg to the mixture, followed by grating in half a lemon. And I continued to cream that for about a minute until it was fully mixed together. Next, it was time to add in 4 ounces of oat milk, but feel free to use buttermilk if that's what you prefer. But I prefer the oat milk when I use these kind of recipes. And I followed that up with 8 ounces of bread flour, and finally, half a packet of active baker's yeast. Using the paddle attachment to mix it all up, and I finally switched to a dough hook for kneading. Making sure not to lose any during the switching process, and allowed that to mix from starting on medium and then increasing to high speed for about 10 to 15 minutes until the dough became soft and elastic. As you can see here, the dough passes the window pane test, showing good gluten formation, so it's time to move on to the first proof. So in a large enough bowl that was equipped with a lid, I oiled the inside of that bowl with a neutral oil, and in this case vegetable oil, and then shaped the dough into a nice smooth ball and placed it inside the oiled bowl for its first proof, which will take 2 hours, or if you're following around, at least it has to double in size. After the first proof, it's time to remove it from the bowl and knock out any of the air that was inside. To do that, first I want to oil a large enough work surface and a rolling pin that will be used to smooth it out. So for me, I'm going to use this wooden cutting. Then begin rolling it out into a large rectangle, and then pressing it down on the edges to form a nice rectangular shape. Next for the filling, I'm going to combine 1/4 cup of white sugar and 1/8 cup of light brown sugar, and follow that up with a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice. I'm going to use a tiny whisk to combine until it's uniform in consistency. And then spread all that mixture over the dough into all the spaces, and now we can begin to roll it. beginning at one end and rolling as tight as possible to the other end. Because my board wasn't big enough, I had to cut it in half to make the rolls. So I divided that in half with a knife and divided each of those into 6 individual rolls to make a total of 20 mini rolls. I placed that on a parchment lined piece of baking sheet that I placed inside a 9x9 inch casserole dish, making sure there was at least a half an inch apart from each of the different rolls, so when they proofed they wouldn't touch each other after they were done proofing. Then I covered this with a towel and let it proof for another 90 minutes. After the 90 minutes of proofing, I uncovered them and it was time to cover with a little bit of melted butter before they go in the oven. And this butter will help them brown when they're in the oven. And then I placed them in a preheated oven set to 375 degrees and cooked them for between 20 to 22 minutes. And while they're baking, it's time to move on to the final piece, which is the cream cheese frosting. So in the same stand mixer, I'm going to add 4 ounces of cream cheese and 2 ounces of salted butter and follow that up with 8 ounces of pumpkin spice syrup that I made at the beginning. I will say to make this frosting, it does help to let the butter and the cream cheese both reach room temperature before trying to whisk them in the stand mixer. Then I turn on the stand mixer with a whisk attachment to medium speed, and after it started to come to an even consistency, I added in a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract and a couple healthy dashes of pumpkin pie spice to increase that flavor. I whisked that together until it was thick and rich and creamy, and ready to top on top with some cinnamon buns. With the frosting done, it's time to take the buns out of the oven. And the parchment paper really helps remove them from sticking to the pan when you pull them out. And I can admire the golden brown and baked to perfection cinnamon rolls that are about to be smothered with frosting. So while they're still hot, I covered every inch of them with pumpkin spiced cream cheese frosting. I wish there was a better decorator when adding this frosting, but the looks won't detract away from the flavor that comes out in the end. Now, the reason for the parchment paper is it allows for an easy tear and share type of bun. So let's rip off a piece and see how these homemade buns compare to the Trader Joe's brand of pumpkin spice cinnamon rolls. So just to kind of compare what's out there, I went and bought a Trader Joe's brand pumpkin spice cinnamon roll. Their instructions for making this were basically open up the package, take it out, put it on a lined baking sheet, bake for 20 minutes, then ice it while it's hot. So that's what it looks like. Just in comparison to mine, obviously because it's factory made and all that stuff, it's a lot tighter. It also is a bigger cinnamon roll than what I made in general. So it's more of an orange icing. It's kind of cakey. It's pretty dry. Syrup really pretty sweet. It's probably more like a sugar icing. Overall, it's okay. Let's look how the one that I made. It's a lot lighter and not as dense. I love that hint of lemon that comes from it. Cinnamon spice is really nice. This cream cheese frosting is just honestly amazing. I could just keep eating it while I was making it. It's not huge in spice, but it is very good texture wise and flavor wise. It's got the nice, cinnamon and the ginger from the pumpkin spice mixture that's inside the inner part. Let's give a good cross section. Yeah, it's very, it's very cooked in the middle, cooked all the way. My cream cheese my cream cheese frosting has a nice richness to it. It's got that creaminess, a little bit of touch of vanilla. I love that syrup that went on it. I mean, this is okay. but it's pretty dried out. It just tastes store-bought versus homemade. So let's look at the cross section of this one. As you can see, I mean, theirs is perfectly shaped. I would say that's a huge difference between homemade and what, you know. Yeah, it's just a syrup, like a sugar frosting. Not artificial, just like pure sugar, basically. So overall, I think there's kind of just different styles. This almost is like a cakey one. This is very doughy and light and airy. And I mean, I just want to eat more of this. So let's eat the center part, see how that tastes. Oh yeah, that's where all the spices are. That's beautiful. Yeah, so overall, I think you can go this route, but it definitely is worth the time to make cinnamon rolls from scratch, homemade. It's super good. So comment down below which one you like better. Smash the like button if you find this helpful. And subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.